Joining us for this next episode is a very special guest. Now, before we introduce a special guest, let's just have a chat about what the feature is going to be on. Now, for anyone who's been following the news, US intelligence agents, according to the CNN, have been hacking computer networks around the world for years, apparently targeting data pipes that push immense amounts of data around the internet. Now, this leak came from Edward Snowden, who was I guess he was working with
with the NSA, wasn't it?
No, he leaked what the NSA did, right? But I actually forgot who he was working with.
Tasnim, not on the ball today.
Not doing my work properly. However, he's actually
he's the whistleblower.
Yep, he was being formally charged with espionage in the United States, and now he's actually going ahead to seek asylum in Ecuador.
Yes, Ecuador seems to be the favourite place to go for anybody who needs to seek asylum after leaking documents. Julian Assange being the first person to go there. So what we're going to do today in order to explore the Snowden issue and exactly what the consequences of, his situation is for the everyday Australian, we're going to be speaking to somebody from Anonymous. Now, if you don't know what Anonymous is, basically anyone can be anonymous, as the name suggests. Anonymous has no leader, no ranking, and no single means of communication. They're spread across many mediums and languages, and people join them by simply defending freedom of the internet and freedom of all human beings. So, one of the collective joins us today, and we are going to be calling him Anon because he is anonymous, because that is the point of Anonymous.
Welcome to the show, Mr Anon.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's just get started. Why is this Snowden story very significant, and why has it caused, reverberations around the world?
Yeah, so as you said when you read out that CNN article, for years it's been predicted by many IT experts that due to things, and it's because of things like a decrease in cost of computer hardware and an increase in the computing power, that the government agencies would have the ability to capture and store and mine all of our communications across the internet. Snowden has just simply proven this for us, and it's essentially a confirmation of a violation of human rights, which is the right for us to have privacy. Basically, we have things the wrong way around. We should have transparency for the state and privacy for the people. And it's worth to mention that that on the 13th of June in the House of Senate, Senator W.A. Scott Ludlam asks Attorney General Senator Ludwig if the Australian authorities and agencies are receiving huge volumes of information from the United States through warrantless real-time surveillance program PRISM. He ends by asking to what degree the Australian government is complicit into this unprecedented intrusion into the private lives and data of ordinary citizens. Each time Ludlam tries to obtain an answer from Ludwig, he gets blown off with evasive responses like they don't discuss matters of national security. The truth of the matter is that there's no proof of their effectiveness. And in reality, this mass surveillance is a potential means of ordinary citizens being implicated and entangled in crimes they haven't committed.
Well, according to Snowden, he actually he says that among 61,000 reported targets of the National Security Agency. Right now, just to correct myself earlier, he worked for Booz Allen Hamilton, which is a computer consulting firm. Obviously, he's been fired, and they have charged him with criminal offences, and they want to take action against him.
Yep.
Now, my question to you is, and this is, I guess, a lot of times people use this to shut people up who do kind of want to speak about privacy and how important privacy is. If you're not doing anything, there's nothing to hide. Why are you worried if you're being monitored or if you're being watched? What would the response be to that?
Well, do you want someone watching your communications, like between your partner, for instance?
I guess, at the end of the day, we've accepted these are legally shrined, privacy rights that we all have. But I think increasingly in our society, where we've become somewhat of a big brother state, that people actually do use the argument that well, if you're not doing anything or you're not hiding anything, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But I think what we need to kind of take a step back and realize is that these are legally enshrined rights that we have to privacy and things like that.
And the thing is that the reason why it's dangerous, and Snowden actually highlights this in his video, the original video that was released, is that they are able to store this information for so long, and they can easily, like, so if they want to take you down, they can, right? And it can be for whatever reason, and they'll find it. Like, you may just have been talking to someone about something completely unrelated, but they'll be able to implicate you in a crime.
You don't know how it will be used against
you.
That's
got
right.
endless access.
That's right. They've got I wouldn't say endless, but it's a lot, right? The capacity of storage is tremendous.
Right. Well, now that we've found this out, and like we're saying, okay, maybe not endless, but it's still a pretty big deal right there. How does the information that's been revealed affect the average Australian? And most particularly, what should the young people who are, extremely internet obsessed and internet reliant be concerned about as a consequence?
Yeah, so it affects anyone that uses the internet, regardless of their generation. And basically, like you said, we have an Orwellian-style surveillance system in place for everything that we do on the internet. So it's a lot of power in the hands of a few people, as discussed earlier, and it should be enough to make everyone think about the implications. Also, agencies like also Intelligence Agency of New Zealand, Australia, and USA and allies have been cooperating since the 50s, and it would be naive to think that the same thing wasn't being done within our own country. So that's worth a
same thing being like the monitoring.
So basically, what's happening in the USA right now, and with the surveillance system that's in place, it could be it is most probably happening here as well, right?
So we're talking surveillance of very commonly used websites such as Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah, all of the social media, all of the online email. Basically everything that you have an account with, and anything that you'll maintain your personal data on would be.
Do you know, this reminds
captured.
me of a paper. I was doing some research last year about the filter bubble. And basically, if you're using Google, for example, you know how you have like Google's connected to your Gmail or whatever else. If you're used to searching for a particular topic area or a particular region, then after a while, without you even putting these settings on, Google starts to filter the kind of results that it'll give to you. So for example, I could Google Sydney now, Anon could Google Sydney, and you, Tasnim, could Google the same thing. The results that we get will be completely different because it's not a random search anymore. It's a search. They're going to check what your geographical point is. They're going to check what your history of searches is, and they'll be basing the search also on personal information that you've submitted time and time again into the web browsers that you're using and the email accounts and so on and so forth. So even though, putting it out there, that just seems like your search becomes a lot more efficient. Really what's happening is that over time they're amassing all this information about your habits and your likes and your preferences and your location. Like it zones it down to what suburb you're in.
Exactly.
But I guess it's down to that double-edged sword where you have these enhancement technologies, right? Where you're potentially, for example, saving hours of research just because the search is so refined. But then at the same time, to enable these enhanced technologies, they have a lot of data on you, right? Now, I guess, the issue comes down to any app you use, any internet site you log on, whether it be, the tracking cookies that come up with it, or whether it be, the app permissions that they need, or GPS tracking. In a globalized world where we do, have our smartphones, internet access, GPS tracking, things like that, it's very, very hard to kind of avoid altogether leaving any sort of digital trace, right? So the concern is that inadvertently we are leaving these traces. And the problem is when they're kind of accessed without our permission. And I think this is when, the whole NSA or ASIO or other intelligence agencies being basically having access, whether limited or unrestricted, to our data for a purpose we don't know about without our consent. That does lead to a lot of concern.
Yeah, so basically that example that you used was Google, and that's true. Like, so before this came out, and even though this was already known, Google would have been doing that for advertising purposes, and they do that. And not that I agree with it, I'm just saying it was for their own agenda, right? But now we're saying that the governments actually are getting this data and collecting this data off them. Yeah. So they know as well where you are, what you're doing. If you check in, your geographic location with your phone or whatever, they know everything about it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all tracked.
All right. So now that we've established that this is terrible and we need to get rid of it, what role does the global citizen play in supporting a whistleblower like Snowden?
Yeah, so people need to speak up about this openly and support Snowden and other whistleblowers as well, because don't forget Snowden's not the only one.
Of course.
People also need to bring to light, people who bring to light corruption in our society shouldn't be treated as criminals, and it's sad to think that we live in a world where this is so.
Yeah, think of Julian Assange, who's a fugitive until now.
Exactly.
And Snowden sort of being put in the same situation. It's funny because in Australia, you sort of have the right to complain about something going wrong in your workplace, and you're not supposed to be discriminated against if that's the case. And yet you have something like this with even bigger implications, on a global scale, and yet they're treated like criminals, just like you've pointed out now.
That's right.
Well, when you say, speak up and openly support Snowden and so on, what do you think that people should actually be doing, realistically? And maybe you talk about that from the perspective of being anonymous from anonymous. Again, as unhomogenized as that is and undefined, considering that everyone comes with their own, perspective and background. But where does Anonymous stand on all of that?
So Anonymous is always on the side of morals, ethics and justice, and that's what the true message of Anonymous is, regardless of what the powers above try to make us think. But basically to everyone, to expand on the last thing is, when you're talking to people and the Snowden thing comes up, be open about it and just say, even those little interactions with people change people's minds and opinions on things, right? So be open and supportive of Snowden and people like him. So,
I guess I'm going to be a devil's advocate, or I should say government advocate in this regard. But if we're talking about, I guess, morality and justice and things like that, Anonymous in the past has had a lot of, I guess, hacktivist campaigns. So hacking for an activist purpose, right? So whether it be, for example, taking down websites, Israeli websites when they did launch the offensive into the Gaza Strip, whether it be, just generally, banking sites or the fat cats, as they like to call them. There's been a lot of these hacktivists. Now that comes to the issue of legally and from a society perspective, where does law and order go? If you kind of have someone who is outraged, or rightly or wrongly so, I'm not placing a moral judgment on this, right? Someone who's outraged with a cause they think is pertinent, and then takes the law into their own hands, and for example, turns into an hacktivist. Then if everybody does that, where does that leave, law and order in society? I guess so. That would be the argument that a lot of people would play. In terms of combating, I guess, say the hacktivist techniques of Anonymous and otherwise.
So the important thing to remember with Anonymous is that there's no leader and there's no central way of everyone, there's no connected apart from there is a general collective, but anyone can become anonymous and do anything under anonymous, so that's where some of the confusion is sometimes as well. But in terms of that, I would consider that like equivalent of armed resistance, right? So what happens with regards to websites or hacktivist attacks like you described earlier, that's like armed resistance for people who are struggling under oppression, right? So yeah, that's the way I view that sort of stuff. Personally, that's a personal opinion. Other Anons have their own opinion.
Definitely. So it's kind of like, I guess, your way of contributing to, I guess, an injustice that you see happening.
That's right.
By physically doing something about it, and in that case, hacking sites.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that to me, and this is another personal opinion, that hacking a website is like graffiti on a wall, right? So when we're talking about cosmetic damage to property, right?
What about another initiative that Anonymous is out with, like trolling the NSA?
Yeah, so that's something that we can all do, actually, not just Anonymous, which is really good. And we can basically, it just involves sending communications with keywords in them that the NSA would be actually doing their data mining on. So whenever you send an email, send out some words that would be considered terrorist activity, and then we can just confuse them, right? So,
or we could get arrested by ASIO.
But how, then you're a martyr.
Who wants to put their hand up for that cause?
And it's not that, but basically, how can, you can't arrest everyone for doing this, right? So that's the point of it as well. It's kind of like...
But then playing devil's advocate again...
Yeah, it's creating noise and confusion.
Okay, but you're creating noise and confusion, then how can these, I guess, agencies that are there to do a job and, I guess, protect the citizens, do their job efficiently and protect us if they're being trolled?
Yeah, but the thing is, we don't agree with all being monitored like this just to protect the citizens. We don't need that, right? So, I mean, that's the main part of this.
The citizens don't need protection?
The citizens need protection, but we don't need it like under those means. Yeah.
I think it's important to also rethink not just the, I guess, social and advocacy framework we're operating in, but sometimes even the legal perspective on things. So, for example, if this is actually a legal breach of privacy, can legal action be taken? Social action, and I think when you unite social, political, legal action together, that's kind of what leads to change in society. Look, I think we've discussed some very important issues in this, and I think there are, as I said, I was playing devil's advocate, but a lot of you guys would have your views on this,
and we could probably take it till next week with all the information that we can discuss about this, but unfortunately we are pretty much out of time. With that, maybe is there a way that people can track down things like these initiatives, the Troll the NSA, for example? How do people get on board with that?
Yeah, so there's we can provide links, hopefully, if this gets posted online, so we can post that. Basically, Troll the NSA is just trollthensa.com. You can go there. There's a template.
Yeah, that's easy to remember.
Yeah, and then there's also a handbook for people that want to try and respect their own privacy, and how to use the internet in a way that would do that.
Right. So make it possible. More secure for yourself.
Yeah, making it and using it in a smarter way that isn't just giving all the information out about yourself. So there's
maybe what we can do with that is actually just post the links on our Facebook page then, and we'll post it under the episode as well when we upload it, and that way anyone who's listening to this can just look at the bottom of the play bar and click on the links and follow through that.
All right, so we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Mr. Anonymous, for coming in and shedding your wisdoms in relation to this subject. As I said, episode will be online, and would love to hear your comments on this. We're going to take a short break. You're listening to the Y Factor on 87.6 FM.